All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. I appreciate you coming. I don't know if you're here, this morning, afternoon, but my goodness, I think we had about 750, 800 people uh, earlier today. So we had a kids program with Lightning McQueen, and looked like it was a big hit. So we had so many people here. It was great. So thanks if you were here earlier and you came back. So appreciate that. So yeah, we got a great program here with Jay Ward and Wayne Carini. We're going to be talking about cars as stars. So let's. We're getting ready to pull out our movie car exhibit here on Sunday, and then put in our Packard. So this is kind of the last 2 days that you get to be able to see these cars, and so we were able to get Jay and Wayne here so that they could kind of talk about that. So. Um, Also, if you would go ahead and look at our other galleries, you can see our Cars of Savoy, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum, our Moonshine Runners, and then the cars in our collection. I'd like to tell you about the rest of the exhibits that are going to be coming up through 2024. So we're going to have another Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum Part 2, where we will be getting the Winners Through the Decades cars that will be here that will replace the ones that are in the Great Hall. We also have some Savoy Survivors. That'll be a fun exhibit. Some high-performance sports cars and some Japanese collectible cars. So that'll be our last one. That'll be in December. Also, we have the Elvis movie that is right before our car connection. So that's that Friday evening. So it'll be here in the theater. So please come and enjoy that. And like I said, we do have the car show on August 17th. So we've actually sold out of the registrations, so we have 300 show cars that will be here on those, the nice green lawn that we have. So please show up and see that. I'd like to thank our friends at Styles Auto Care again for our Tire Side Chats, helping sponsor to have these events here. So appreciate that very much. And what I'd like to do now is introduce Wayne Carini. Wayne, as everybody knows, he's kind of part of us now, so I think we've actually given him a badge with his name. He's been here enough times now. So this is Wayne. So many of you know Wayne from Chasing Classic Cars and his F40 Motorsports. We also were lucky enough, Jay Ward, he works at Pixar, and many of you know his movies. So the whole Cars trilogy, if you guys are familiar with that, he's done a lot of the other Pixar movies like Monsters, Inc., Ratatouille, Brave. So Jay is the creative director there at Pixar. So I'd like to bring out Jay now. And I will hand you the microphone.
All right.
Or the remote.
Hey, Jay.
And then, of course, Lightning McQueen is here, too. That's the most important.
Oh, yes. Don't forget Lightning.
Public announcement. Is Dino Bongiorno here? The police are waiting for you in the lobby. Oh, there we are.
It's his old neighbor. He's just being mean. Okay. Well, we're here to talk about movie cars, iconic movie cars. And if you haven't checked out the exhibit yet, we're going to talk a little bit about the cars in that exhibit, so you'll get a chance afterwards to go and hopefully with a little bit more knowledge about them.
Why don't you start with Lightning here?
Well, this is pretty interesting. So the McQueen you're looking at here is one of only 2 Lightning McQueens in the world, life-size Lightning McQueens, that don't belong to the Walt Disney Company. I fought to have one on the West Coast and one on the East Coast that are in car collections or car museums. So this one typically lives at the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte, and you can see it there most of the year. And then we have one at the Peterson Automotive Museum in LA. These were built in 2017 when we made Cars 3 from the original digital data of the character, life size. We built one for ourselves that actually has a motor, electric motor, and lights and sounds, and we drove it up on the stage at the Detroit Auto Show in 2017 for the press. And then we built these 2 static display ones for those museums. And for me, part of Cars that's so important to me is that it stays alive in the real automotive world, that McQueen is a car, and he belongs in a car museum among other cars, so that kids growing up come to love automobiles. And I think we're seeing that now, that as the movie's coming up on It's 18 years old this summer.
Yeah.
The first film, hard to believe.
And we had a sold-out crowd here today of many children and their families, and it was wonderful to see the kids getting their picture taken, adults getting their picture taken too.
Yeah, exactly. Not just for kids.
I mean, you know, so this is an adult film, really, that the children like watching too.
Yeah, exactly. A film for the whole family.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
All right, well, let's jump into it. So movie cars, right?
Movie
I mean,
cars.
we love movies, we love cars, and there's certain films that are just so iconic because of the cars in them.
The cars become the characters as well, and that's the whole thing. And I have little feeling of that for one of the cars we're going to talk about, but every car becomes a character in the movie.
Yeah, so we just picked out a smattering of some of our favorite cars from television and film that you guys will recognize, and jumping right into it, if anybody remembers Starsky and Hutch. That's right, that's right. This was for those who don't know, this was a 70s detective show where they drove a Gran Torino, red with the white boomerang stripe. And it's a pretty replicated paint job, I think, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and they had a suction cup, bubble gum machine on the top, you know. So
oh yeah, that's right.
They had that.
The police
but
light.
If you had a red Torino, most red Torinos ended up with big hockey stick stripes on them afterwards. You know?
Yeah, I was telling Wayne earlier that I saw in England there's a little tiny car called a Reliant Robin. It's a three-wheeled car. If you ever watch Top Gear, it rolls over all the time. And somebody had painted one in the Starsky and Hutch paint jobs. I'm like, apparently anything can be the Starsky and yeah. There's your bubblegum light up on
there
top
it is,
there.
Yep.
So great car. We thought we'd just start off with the Starsky and Hutch car. Moving along, this movie, if you haven't seen it, stars Dennis Weaver. This was Steven Spielberg's first film. 1971, I think.
Road Rage.
Road Rage, first film to feature road rage, where he accidentally cuts off a semi, and then the semi truck wants to kill him in this film. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
And there's no one driving the semi.
Yeah, nobody's driving it. Yeah, and
Right.
it's just such a crazy film. And then of course at the end the truck goes off a cliff, and that's the end of that.
And it burns.
Yeah, and it burns. Yeah, this was it was a Plymouth Valiant he was driving in the film, and it's a tanker truck that he cuts off, and then good riddance to the bad guy at the end.
That's right.
Anybody remember The Car? The Car was a horror movie. If you haven't seen it, it's crazy. The idea is that this car is like demon possessed, and it kills people randomly, like hitchhikers, and the police get involved. And this car was built by George Barris.
George Barris. Yep.
Yeah, and looks like a lot of Bondo going on.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Real heavy on the front end.
Heavy Bondo on the front end, but the car would do this evil horn honk, and there's a scene where the guy's hitchhiking, and it passes.
Plows him right over.
Well, he flips it off, and
Right.
then it backs up, and then the guy, oh, good, you're going to pick me up, and then it kills him. So, yeah, I think it's another car that goes off the cliff at the end to die.
Always going off.
You got to go off the cliff. It's the only way
Yeah.
to die.
Thelma and Louise.
Yeah. Speaking of evil cars, one of my favorites. Now, the Savoy Museum has a 57 or 58 Plymouth Savoy, but this is, of course, a Fury. And what I love about this movie, if you haven't seen it, it's Stephen King based on a novel by him, is the car is possessed. And it starts possessed right on the assembly line at the beginning of the film.
The hood slams down, cuts the guy's
Cuts the
fingers
guy's
off.
fingers off. The song Bad to the Bone is playing.
Right.
And then another guy comes in on the assembly line and sits in the car, and he drops his cigar ash on the seat, and the car doesn't like that, and the electric seat comes forward and crushes him into the steering wheel. It is an evil film. And along the way, this nerdy kid, and by the way, the movie is set in current day, I would say early 80s when the film came out, and he's driving a 57 Plymouth, which was a nerdy car to drive in the 80s in high school. Everybody else had, muscle cars and stuff. And he slowly becomes possessed by the car and becomes this weird, cool kid because of the car, but it goes too far.
Yeah.
I won't give away too much more.
Right.
Okay.
The Batmobile.
We got to get right to it. This has got to be top 5 for most people. The Batmobile came out, the TV show I think is 1966, came out with Adam West.
And George Barris built this car out of a concept car, and so you see the windshields, and then we'll be able to see the concept car coming up. But this is one of the most replicated cars too. So George built one for the movie, and then George found out that he could make a lot of money by replicating it. So I don't know how many replicated. Then another company started replicating them. So there's quite a few of them in the museum, but I think there was only 2. There was one totally original one. You'll see the windshields, and there it is. That's a Lincoln concept car.
Yeah, so George actually bought a 50s era concept car and turned it into the Batmobile, and people don't realize that it was actually a show car that at that point was just an old show car.
Right.
And the fact that Lincoln would sell it to George Barris to modify for a TV show.
Well, a lot of them, they crushed the cars afterwards. They took them to war hoops out in Michigan, and they crushed these cars. They cut them up.
Yeah, and when you look at this, you can see he didn't have to do a ton of work. I mean, a lot of the body work was, the design was already there.
Yeah, well, the windshields were the key part, that's for sure.
Yeah, this was a Lincoln concept. Moving on, Smokey and the Bandit. I love this film. It's a funny movie. It's a great one. The car is not a living car in it, and it's not a character as much, but it's the hero's car, right? It's the Trans Am, what we call the Fire Chicken, with the big gold eagle on the hood. And he's running from the cops in this film. And, this is probably, I think the film came out in 1978. And by then, muscle cars had no muscle left. Your late 70s muscle car
About
had
200 horsepower.
220 horsepower. It should have been 400. But it really helped Pontiac in sales with this car.
And anybody that's got a Firebird with a chicken on the hood, it's Smokey and the Bandit car. It's not a Trans Am anymore. It's Smokey and the Bandit.
It's the Fire Chicken.
That's right.
That's right, yeah.
That was a fun movie.
Yeah, it was a great film.
And the sheriff was a lot of fun. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Burt Reynolds made a ton of money on that movie.
And of course Jackie Gleason as the
That's right.
as the sheriff, and Sally Fields was just so sweet in this film. And this love story develops with the two of them over this car, which I thought was so neat that she sort of elopes with him in this car by the end of the movie. Speaking of lovely cars and relationships, Herbie the Love Bug, the original film was a Disney film, and it wasn't called Herbie the Love Bug. It was just called The Love Bug, which people don't realize. The car is called Herbie, of course. Dean Jones did a number of films with Walt Disney back in that era, and this one was really popular.
And it was scripted well, and a lot of the great characters. Buddy Hackett was in it, and
Yeah.
Buddy Hackett. And so you'll see a Intermechanica. What was the model?
In the background, that's an Apollo
GT.
An Apollo GT, which was Mr. Thorndike. Remember the bad guy who ran the car dealership, and he didn't want the Beetle. He got rid of the Volkswagen Beetle, and that's the car that Dean Jones ends up driving and then beating him in this against all these sports cars.
Right.
But if you watch that movie again, there's tons of great cars in that film.
Cobras, 275 Ferraris.
Yeah,
a little bit of everything.
They filmed things at Riverside Speedway down in down south at Riverside, which the track's no longer there. So many great cars in that film, and of course it spun a number of
And the Apollo GT was a cool car. Frank Reisner built that car in the San Diego area, but it was powered by a Ford engine, 289, and then they went to Cleveland.
I think it's a Buick.
Well, they used Buicks too, but
Yeah.
they had 351 Clevelands in them.
Yeah, but anyway, back to Herbie. The car was modified heavily, obviously, for the movie, and there was a number of stunts they had to do with the car would split in half and pull wheelies, and they went through a number of Volkswagen Beetles on the film. So I don't know if there is one original Herbie. I'm sure there's.
Well, and one of the cars that was replicated, probably one of the most replicated cars. Anybody, all you need to do is put a number on it and some stripes, and it's Herbie.
But yeah, and then of course it's a love story too, about a car with character, right? Herbie was a living car. I think Lightning McQueen is a living car. We love this idea that our cars can come alive, and movies like Herbie the Love Bug really kind of makes us feel like, yeah, I can name my car, and my car's alive when it goes down the road. Some cars that weren't so nice, right? Does anybody remember Mad Max? This film was an Australian film done on a budget, a low budget.
So that's a Ford Falcon that was made in Australia.
In Australia.
In Australia, made Ford Falcon, but they heavily modified.
Yeah, it had a blower on it, and it was the cop's car, but of course he's kind of a bad guy cop in it who's a vengeance cop because they've killed his family and he's out for revenge. But it put Mel Gibson on the map, and really that car, there's replicas of it in Australia. I've never seen one elsewhere, but it's such a neat car that was only in that first film.
Yep, that's it. Then they went kind of crazy with cars.
Yeah. Anybody remember Ferris Bueller's Day Off? So, for those of you who don't know, that is not a real Ferrari they crashed in the film. Even back then, when the film was coming out, that was a $2 or $3 million car back then.
Right. Now it's $25 million.
Right. But that was so much money that the director went out and bought a few replicas. They have to have a hero car that they drive. They had to have the car that wrecked. Remember the one that went out the back window of his dad's house in Chicago? So there was a company called Modena that made replicas that had Chevy small blocks in them,
Yep.
fiberglass body, and this car was driven in the movie extensively. Remember the valets take it out and get airborne in it, and they just trash these cars. Which, by the way, if you ever loan your car out for a movie, they're hard on cars.
And I never valeted my car ever again.
No, you never valet after that. Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things. You go, oh God, is that what they do?
Yeah.
It's sort of like going in the kitchen of a restaurant. You know, you don't want to see.
No, you don't want to know. The interesting thing is there's a group called the Historic Vehicle Association where they honor cars that have historic significance.
That's right.
Cultural
Cultural,
significance.
right.
Yeah. And this car, not the real Ferrari 250 Cal Spider, but this car, the Ferris Bueller car, was recognized.
That's right.
For what it means, which is pretty cool. And that's on the lawn there in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bueller.
Yep. Yep.
Bueller.
Yeah, and this is probably one of the other most replicated cars, of course, is the General Lee, because anybody with the Dodge Charger would want to do that to their car. You know, this show, again, it was an early 80s show, but they were featuring a car from the 70s from this height of the muscle car era. It was an inexpensive car at the time. They wrecked 300 of them for the show. 300 of these cars got damaged. They had a whole lot full of them. They would jump them, smash them, destroy them, run them through barns, run them off cliffs. Very
But
very
that
hard.
showed you it was real. I mean, it wasn't an animated or
No.
an AI.
Practical effects. In fact, if you look closely at the underside of this car, this is obviously one of the stunt cars. It's got real heavy-duty roll bars. You can see they've welded stuff on the frame. They would typically, when you do these shows, there's a car that's seen up close. It's called the hero car. That's for all the pretty shots, them sliding over the hood or talking. But then you have the stunt cars, the ones that
Right.
get beat up and damaged. And they jump these cars so much that they would literally break the cars in half.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was the end of the General Lee. Magnum PI. Yeah. Now we're getting into the early 80s. You know, Ferrari was a popular car among car people forever. But if
Right.
you weren't a car person,
Well, this is the car that set them on the map as far as an affordable sports car.
yeah.
So a 308, was in the early 70s, and it was, or late 70s, I should say, and it was just, it became an iconic car because of the TV show. Thomas Magnum was a very tall guy. So if you look in it, his head is fitting in the car. And it would never fit in the car, a very tall guy. But if you look at this, at the seat, it's pushed all the way back. So what they did is they took the bottom cushion out of the seat, and he sat on the floor. And then they bolted the cushion, the back cushion, they thinned it out and bolted it to the firewall between the engine and him. And that way there he could fit in the car better. And they never put the top on, if you knew that. I
Yeah.
mean, we always drove with the top off.
Yeah, in
But-
fact, you can see where the headrest is compared to where his head is. He was gigantic in that car. They're
Yeah.
not big cars to get inside. And he's well over 6 foot, but he managed to squeeze in. I imagine Ferrari probably sold half of their cars in the U.S. because of that television show.
Still today, people will come in, and we sell quite a few of these cars at my shop, and they'll say, oh, it's not a Ferrari 301. Oh, you got a Magnum car. That's it. It's recognized, It's like a Coca-Cola bottle. That's not a bottle of soda. Oh, you got a Coke.
Exactly.
So it's recognizable.
Synonymous, yeah.
That's right. Goes along.
And of course, the 308 was made in a GTB, which was the closed car. This one, the GTS, that had the removable target top, and they needed the GTS for Magnum for obvious,
Getting in and out.
obvious reasons.
That's
yeah,
right.
exactly. Knight Rider. This was another show where the car was a character. It was a living car. You remember the little voice box would talk to him and had all the crazy stunts.
The
and
lights.
buttons. Yeah, and this was a current car at the time. This was an 83, 84 era of the Pontiac Trans Am.
Yep.
And neat car. You remember he could drive it into the back of the van, have stuff done on it, and they could pull back out of the van again. And this TV show really put David Hasselhoff on the map. I think everybody wanted to have a blacked out car in that time period. It was just cool to have the all black car.
What do they call? What's his nickname?
The
Hoff.
Hoff. The Hoff. I thought you meant the car.
No.
The Kit. The Knight
Yeah.
2000 Industries car was
Yeah,
the nickname.
yeah,
The
yeah.
car was Kit. But that was the Knight 2000.
Get the cough and Hoff.
Yeah. 18 van, anybody remember this one? It's funny, this is not a character so much, but this van, again, was in the 70s and early 80s, there was this big craze, obviously, of custom vans. And this whole idea that these guys would all travel around together in a van with no
The
windows.
A-Team.
Yeah. It's can't imagine how bad it would smell in that van after a couple days with those guys. You'd be dying to get out.
And of course, it's got that wing on the back to keep it down, the aerodynamics.
Oh, yeah. You got a guy in there
The big box going down the road with the wing on the back.
Yeah, and somebody
They look cool.
Somebody smoking cigars in there. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
boy, it's nasty. But anyway, neat van. They made
Still lives on today.
Yeah, they made a model kit of it. A lot of fun. I had to include it. The Cuts for Mutts Dumb and Dumber car. I'll just leave that one as is.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Going back a little bit to the 60s, The Italian Job was a great film because they utilized a specific car for a specific purpose. The Mini Cooper, which came out in 61?
61.
61 is the Mini Cooper.
60 was the early cars, but 61
61 would be production.
Yeah.
If you ever see a real Mini Cooper, they are
Actually, 59.
59.
59.
All right, there you go. incredibly tiny car. Incredibly tiny. A lot of room inside, but small cars.
And one of the best cars in the world. I had one when I was in high school, and I still have the same car today. I've got actually 5 of them. So,
5 Mini Coopers.
5 Mini Coopers.
Well, they fit in the spot of one car, so
That's
why
right.
wouldn't you?
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's the most fun car to drive. And when all the kids in high school had their muscle cars, I was driving that, and they'd all laugh at me. And then I'd put them in the car, and I'd scare them to death.
They handle pretty good.
You'd get to a corner, and they said, "When are you going to put the brakes on?" "Oh my God, I'm going to die!" Pick it up on 2 wheels. It was fun.
Yeah, and in the film, if you watch The Italian Job, they can drive them through little alleyways and down staircases, and those cars all did that in that film, which is pretty cool. There was a remake that happened when the new Mini Cooper came out, 2005, 2006. Nothing's ever as good as the original.
No.
But
it helped Mini's sales.
Sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was about a bank robbery, and they went out in the Alps, and same thing. I think this was one of the best car movies ever made.
If you haven't seen Tucker, it's a Francis Ford Coppola film. It is truly worth seeing. Jeff Bridges in his prime. The story of Tucker, for those of you who don't know, Tucker was a post-war brand that should have rivaled the big 3. It had so many innovations. It had a rear engine. They had a padded dash. It had seat belts. It had an escape hatch if you flipped over. It had a center headlight that turned when you drove around corners like active headlights on cars today. Way ahead of its time.
And Big 3 put them out of business.
Yeah, they did. And this movie was a great film because it tells the story in such a compelling way. They borrowed a lot of the original cars. There's only 50 Tuckers built.
About 50 Tuckers were built, and today they're one of the most coveted cars.
Yeah, well over $1 million for a Tucker.
Well over $1 million.
Yeah. There was one here at the museum on display not very long ago, and hopefully it'll be back again. They built a couple replicas for the film, as they have to do. One of those, if you ever are in California, you go up to Napa to the wineries. There's a Coppola winery, and they've got
it's right there at
one
the
of the
bar.
replicas there on display. All right, moving on.
Now this is a car that was a character.
Tell us a little bit about this car, because you know this car pretty well.
So this movie, of course, is Rain Man, and it's about an autistic brother meeting up with his hotshot car salesman brother, and Tom Cruise, and Dustin Hoffman played an unbelievable character. So we have an autistic daughter. My daughter Kimberly's autistic. She's 35 now. But when the movie came out, it was very difficult. A lot of people didn't know what autism was. And my wife would go to the grocery store, and my daughter was acting up, and she'd say, "Okay, what's wrong with your daughter? Is she deaf?" "Oh no, she has autism." They say, "Can I catch it?" There's nothing. So this explained everything, and that car meant so much to us, and the film so much to us because of all that. It was about 2 years after the movie came out that a yellow Buick came in on a flatbed into my business, and I said, "Whose car is this?" He says, "I don't know, some lady's going to call you." So I talked to the lady. She says, "My boss would like you to restore the car for him." And I called her back the next day, and I said, "This looks like the Rain Man car. It's kind of weird. I have an autistic daughter." She goes, "That's because it is." So Barry Levinson was the director of the movie. He'd seen my TV show and myself promoting autism charities with my daughter, and he sent me the car to restore, which is in one of the galleries out here today. The end of the story is really good. So we restored the car for him. He had no place to keep it, and he asked me if I'd store it for him. We've had the car now close to 13 years, and he's never seen the car. And I made a deal with him that I would keep it if he would allow me to show it and for autism charity events and things like that. And so all I got to do is call his secretary, and I say, "I'm moving the car to the Savoy Museum." "Okay, no problem." And I try to buy the car from him, and he says, "Wayne, why would you want to buy the car? You have the car. You don't have to pay any money for it. You can use it anytime you want. Why would you want to pay me?"
Sounds like a smart guy.
Yeah. But the car was so iconic in the movie, it became a character. And of course, one of the best lines is when Dustin Hoffman says, "I'm an excellent driver. I'm an excellent driver."
Yeah.
So
I think what's important about the film to remember too is you have one brother who's very driven. In fact, the opening of the movie is him unloading Lamborghini Countaches off the container ship. But you have one brother who's very driven, wants to get there. He tries to put his brother on the airplane, and his brother can't fly, and he just wants to get to California and get this over with and turn him into some sort of a home to take care of him so he can go get on with his life. But because they have to go in an old car, they have to slow down and enjoy the ride along the way, and it causes him to have a relationship with his brother he never would have had.
And they have to stop midway because he's got to watch Judge Wapner, or,
right?
You know, and
only gets his underwear at Kmart.
Wheel of Fortune, or you know, Jeopardy or something like that.
It's a great film.
It was a wonderful film, and it helped the autism community out immensely.
I have a question for you. The interior in that car, is it the original interior that was in there when Tom Cruise drove the car?
It was, and so Barry Levinson said, restore the car completely, but don't touch the interior, because Tom Cruise and the guys just sat in the car. You know, Dustin Hoffman sat in that seat, so don't change it at all.
Smart, yep. That's cool. All right.
Yeah.
Back to the Future, another possibly one of the most iconic car movies when I think of films that featured cars. The DeLorean was an interesting car. It was a new car when the film came out.
Yeah.
But the DeLorean was always kind of shrouded in mystery. It wasn't a Ferrari. It wasn't a Lamborghini. It was supposed to be this new great car, but it wasn't an extremely fast car.
Yeah, and it was built in Ireland, and the Irish government gave a lot of tax breaks
to John DeLorean.
To John DeLorean to build it, and then John DeLorean apparently was running low on cash, so he decided to become a drug dealer.
Well, you know, he just
that's a story.
Just sold some drugs apparently,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just caught on video.
And he got caught, and so the production stopped on the car, but this movie brought the car to light again. I mean, you know, it is a cool looking car. It's not very fast. It sort of breaks down every once in a while. It's got a Renault engine in it, but with the gull-wing doors, you know, this was one of the first cars after the Mercedes Gullwing to have gullwing doors.
Yeah, and a stainless steel body, which was kind of a big deal at the time.
Yeah. So it's very cool.
From what I understand, the car was supposed to be a lot more advanced than what it was, but the funding just kept running low,
right.
and he had to keep cutting corners, which is why you had this dinky engine and some things that weren't well thought out.
That's right.
But this movie changed everything. If you have a DeLorean, it's the same thing as the Magnum PI car.
Right.
Nobody says, oh my gosh, you have the Back to the Future car.
That's right.
Happens to be a DeLorean. And you can look at one, a stock one, what they look like original, right out here on the floor for the Rad Cars display. So you get a chance to look at them. You won't find one in the movie car collection, because what I love about the Savoy is they were very specific to not use any replicas. Every film car you see in that room were the actual cars used in the movies. They will not use replicas. That's why there's not a Herbie or a Batmobile, because 99% of them are fakes, and they wanted to use all original cars, which I really appreciate. Ghostbusters. Man, I love this film. The original one, of course. Harold Ramis, who was in the movie, also wrote it. Rick Moranis is in it. It put Bill Murray on the map, I think, as much as Stripes or anything else. But in the movie, they buy a beat-up 59 Cadillac Hearst that is primer black and turn it into the Ghostbuster car.
It was a great movie. I mean, you know, there was so many iconic, you know, parts of the movie, but every hearse now you see or ambulance is, again, the Ghostbuster.
Yeah, exactly. And they're massive.
It wasn't hard to make. You know, you put some stuff on the top and those hoses down the side. I don't know what that was from. It was trapping all the ghosts in there or something.
Right.
It was sucking them in like a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, the ghost collectors. Yeah, exactly. And the car they bought was a junky car when they bought it for the film, and it was burning oil, which you see in the film. You can see smoke coming out of the back when they drive it. But it's so iconic that when they brought the movie back, you know, the remake a few years ago,
there
sure
it is
enough,
again.
You know, there was one movie they made, one of the Ghostbusters films, they tried to reimagine the Ghostbusters cars in 80s version. It just wasn't cool. You got to have the original. Yep. Okay, Bullitt. Now, here's an interesting film, because Bullitt, when you watch it, it's not necessarily a great film, but it's a great chase scene movie, right?
It's got to be one of the best chase scenes ever.
Yeah, it's iconic. It's filmed on the streets of San Francisco. There's a black 69 Charger that the bad guys are driving.
The hubcaps fall off.
Hubcaps fall off multiple times. They pass a green Volkswagen Beetle multiple times.
Multiple times. Different camera angles. Same thing, though.
Yeah, they turn a corner at one place in San Francisco, and the next corner they're a mile away in the same city. I don't know how they do it, but it's.
But you were so tied up in watching the car. You didn't pay until you watch it like 10 times, and then you pick all the bad things up.
Yeah, it's really well done, well shot. Steve McQueen loved making this film, and he loved the car so much he wanted to buy it after the production of the film. It was sold. You can read the story. The family who bought the car kept it and used it as their family car for years.
I think it was in Auto Week, in the back of Auto Week, and they bought it.
Yeah.
And it said right in the ad, used in the movie, you know, Bullitt.
Yeah, and they bought it. It's family in New Jersey. And Steve McQueen tried to buy it back from the family. There's a letter on his letterhead, which was Solar Productions, was his film company, and they didn't have any interest in selling it to him. kept it till the
so
father
the
died.
dad passed away, and the son all of a sudden started. He took it out. Nobody knew where the car was for years, and finally it appeared. And of course, everybody wanted to buy it, and so Hagerty Insurance got involved and really promoted the car. Took it around to a lot of shows.
And Mecum sold it.
$3.7 million. And what was great is the son, nice guy, regular body shop guy, you know, working hard, making a great living, but not anything extravagant. And they have this car, and that car, that sale of that car just changed
their
his
lives.
life.
Yeah. Eleanor is another Mustang, just not quite as iconic. This is from the Gone in 60 Seconds remake. They did make a lot of replicas of this car, but I don't think it ever achieved the status.
A lot of people, they always say, do you have any Eleanors in stock? They don't say Mustang, they call Eleanors. I go, no, we don't.
Eleanor, yeah.
Yeah.
So, moving on. If you have not seen American Graffiti, you have to see this film. I'm going to give a quick little bit on it. So George Lucas, his first kind of full-length feature film was called THX 1138. It was a sci-fi film that starred Robert Duvall. It was big, but not humongous. His next film follow-up, he wanted to do a film about his high school years. 1962 was his high school era, and he wanted to do a film about growing up in Modesto, California, in the Central Valley, the culture of cruising, meeting girls, the mating rituals of a young man in America in 1962 with the car. And this film, if you watch it, it starts at sunrise and it ends at sunset the next day. It's a complete 24-hour window of time. There's a nighttime scene, then it ends at sunrise the next morning.
Right.
And the cars in it are so iconic. This is a young George Lucas. The car he's leaning on, the white car, is the 58 Impala, which is here.
Yep,
and
that's out in the gallery.
It's out in the gallery. The car
In a Dujavo,
yeah,
2CV.
a Dodge on the other side with a Richard Dreyfuss leaning out the window.
Yeah.
There's the car that's in the gallery. Of course, so many iconic stars like Harrison Ford was in it, who went on to be Han Solo in Star Wars.
Yeah.
A young Richie Cunningham, Ron Howard is in it.
Howard.
They're all in this film.
This car belongs to Ray Evernham. Ray bought it several years ago and brought it back to exactly as it was in the film.
Yeah, Ray is a NASCAR Hall of Fame recipient. He was Jeff Gordon's crew chief for a number of years, for all the winning years.
And a great guy.
Great guy, and he owns this car. Of course, you got Suzanne Summers in it, who later went to be in Three's Company, but this was kind of her film breakout role when she says, I love you, mouths, I love you to Richard Dreyfuss, and he spends all night trying to find her, and Wolfman
Right.
Jack puts out the word to look for her.
Right, and she's driving around in a =57 T-Bird, which
Yeah.
is, you know, was the best sports car you could buy at the time. You know,
Yeah.
that was like the Cadillac of sports cars.
Yeah, just a fantastic film. Of course, it ends in a chase scene between Harrison Ford and the protagonist with the piss yellow, that's what he calls it in the film,
That's
the
right.
32 coupe against the 55.
And that car's around. We see that car every once in a while at different shows.
Yeah.
The 32 Coupe and the black car, which is not the Chevy that was in two-lane blacktop, but two-lane blacktop. Another great movie you should see if you haven't seen it. It's got James Taylor and Dennis from the Beach Boys in it, and it's just a great film.
Yeah,
and how they go racing and to make money across the country, and they got a broker and that's what they do.
Yeah, two-lane blacktop.
But you know, cars were such an important part of life back in our era. Back in, you know, I grew up in the '60s and early '70s, and there was no cell phones. There was nothing like that. You went out at night, hung out with your buddies at the farm shop in Glastonbury, and you know, you go out drag racing with somebody. You know, we go over the Berlin Turnpike and we go drag racing. It meant so much to us, you know, for that freedom. Now kids don't even want to get their license. You know, 16. I mean, I was on the doorstep motor vehicle at 6 o'clock in the morning the day I was going to take my test, and so it's a different era right now. But hopefully they'll catch on.
I think there's some. I see some hope. I see some young people that do love cars, and I'm hoping there's more of that. Grand Prix, 1966.
What a film!
James Garner, for those of you who don't know, James Garner was a true car guy.
He was.
He raced. He did Baja. He did road racing.
Yep.
He loved F1. He didn't actually race in F1, but he loved that. This film had a number of real racers in the film.
And yeah, it was filmed with real race cars. These weren't stunt cars or anything. These were real race cars. He's driving. I think it's a Lotus, is what he's driving here. But and a lot of real race car drivers were, you know, they were in the film also. So it was really something. This is not a set-up shot either. This is banking at the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
So, I mean, such an iconic car. This could have been Monza, actually.
Yeah, this looks like the Bank at Monza,
Yeah.
the Parabolica. But they also developed the film car for the first time. They took another Formula One car and set up a whole rig on it so they could move the camera around as the cars drove, which nobody had done before.
Right.
You know, they would typically in the movies in the 50s, you would strap the camera onto the hood of the car, looking in at the people driving, and you'd see them driving if they even did that at all. Half the time it was in a studio. But if they had a practical driving shot, it was either a faraway shot or just a camera through the windscreen. This is the first time where they had a separate camera car that could drive around the guys. And they also did point of view shots where they attached an 8mm or 35 millimeter camera right to the side of a helmet.
Right.
So you got the shot from their point of view. That just hadn't been done before.
Right.
Yeah. Here's a movie about racing, cars. And, you know, we already spoke about cars enough, but what I think's great about the film was we really did our homework for it. We made sure that the sounds were right, the cars are right, they moved right, the suspension was
Well,
correct.
that's all because of you. So Jay was the technical and is the technical advisor at Pixar Studios.
Thank you, yeah. So
So anytime you see any of the things, for instance, next time you see the Cars movie and you see Mater, you're going to see the tread in the tires. It's absolutely correct for a truck tire. Yeah. I mean, every little detail, and we were explaining to the children today about the eyes. Why are the eyes in the windshield? Normally in a car movie you'd see eyes in the headlights because it raises your viewpoint in the car and it's easier to film. And it looks more like a person with the eyes in the windshield.
So it's funny because when this film came out, which is again 2006, 18 years ago, we were striving to make a great film. We weren't saying we're making a great kids film or a great cartoon, but just a great film. And Auto Week magazine at the time said this is one of the best car films, not kids films, best car films ever made.
Right.
That came from Auto Week, and the reason they said that was because this is one of the first films that did its homework. A lot of films will say, oh, we're set in the 1950s, and then a 74 Super Beetle drives in.
Right.
Right? If you're a car guy, it drives you nuts.
Well, you must have done 2 years of work before this was even done. So
yeah, total of 6 years on the movie from beginning to end. 6 years. We started in 2000. The film came out in 2006. So there was a ton of work and research and research.
And you drove across country. You went on Route 66 and got to see what the landscape was. For instance, the background, you'll see hood ornaments. You'll see tread marks up in the sky in the clouds. I mean, little things like that you pick up.
Yeah, and the inspiration, I jumped ahead a little bit, was this little short film made by Walt Disney called Susie the Little Blue Coupe. It came out in 1952. The director was a guy named Bill Peet. Sterling Holloway was the voice of the narrator in it. But this was the first time that we had seen eyes in the windshield with Susie the Little Blue Coupe. And we watched this short film. It moves around. It's too squashy and stretchy for what we were trying to do. We like to have truth in materials where they move like a real car. This doesn't move like a real car. But I love the story of a little car watch this short if you get a chance. You can find it on YouTube. It's about 8 minutes long. It's on Disney+. But the car basically goes through a number of owners and then gets dilapidated. And at the end, she's sitting in a junkyard. She thinks she's going to die, and a young kid buys her and turns her into a hot rod at the end of it. And so Susie has this second life as a hot rod, which I thought was a really sweet.
There's a lot of cars like that.
Sweet story. Yeah, exactly.
We give them second lives.
Yeah. So let's jump forward to modern times. Ford versus Ferrari. I thought the cinematography in this was great. If you didn't know who Carroll Shelby was, it was a great understanding of him. The fact that Ford went to Le Mans to beat Ferrari, that whole challenge, it didn't, by the way, the movie glosses over it. It didn't happen the first time. It was a number of years before they actually won at Le Mans and spent a ton of money and effort in order to do it. It's not an easy race. It's a 24-hour race, and most cars don't finish.
They built a lot of cars for this movie, so that's not a real GT40, that raced the Le Mans. These were replicas. And the 917 Porsches that were racing, all the cars that were racing in the film were built. They were replica cars. But they did a really good job in making the replicas and replicating the sounds of the car. And probably one of the better car films we've ever seen.
There's a few things when you watch a racing movie that they get right or get wrong, right? One of them is the accuracy of the cars.
Right.
Another one is the accuracy of the sound of the cars. Another one is how they film it. What drives me crazy, and I watched a Gran Turismo not very long ago, which is based on the video game Gran Turismo, and they always love to do this. They're racing against each other, and the guy looks over at the other guy, and they stare at each other while they're racing. And nobody stares the other guy down while you're racing. You're going to go off the road and crash, right? Or they drop it down a gear like it's a boost of turbo. Like, come on, guys, nobody does that.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
No, it was very well done. There were some things, as car guys, if you know the stories of these things, you know, and you grew up with it, you could pick a lot of stuff apart. But
Sure.
in general, it was done very well.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Ken Miles, they didn't give him enough credit, but
No.
it really is important. And a lot of people honestly don't know who Ken Miles is, and so I give the movie credit for at least telling people that.
That's right.
He was
It
such an
wasn't all
important
about
part.
Carroll Shelby.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, Ken Miles was a major character in the film. Unfortunately, he did die testing one of the GT cars for
Yeah,
Carroll
one
Shelby.
of the J cars.
That's right, one of the later GT40s.
Yep.
But fantastic film. Watch if you get a chance. Rush. If you haven't seen that one, this is Ron Howard. So believe it or not, the guy who was in American Graffiti, Ron Howard, who was also Opie from Mayberry, grew up, became an actor and now a director, and he directed Rush. And Ron Howard is not a car guy. I mean,
No.
capital N, not a car guy, but he did his homework.
Well, just like Matt Damon. Matt Damon really doesn't own any cars. I mean, he owns a couple motorcycles, but he did a good job in the film. And
Yeah.
this is a great film because this is the era that I grew up in, Formula One, and James Hunt, the playboy. He'd be out till 3 or 4 in the morning with women, and he'd show up at the racetrack drunk and get in the car and race it.
And win.
And win. And Niki Lauda was the exact opposite. He was just like a machine, and all he wanted to do was win. And thank God for Niki Lauda because he brought safety to racing. He refused to race. He got in a car accident and really got burnt, deformed his whole face, and within 6 weeks he was back in the car racing again. All he needed was 1 point to win the championship in Suzuka, Japan. It was raining out. He felt it was unsafe, and he pulled in the pit. And all he had to do was finish the race, and he would have won the championship. And he said, "No, it's unsafe." He learned from that one accident.
Yeah. It's a great movie, and the production design, the level they go to get all the details right is great. This is another film where they built replicas and crashed them in the movie, which is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's tricky because when you watch racing films, there's usually like the computer-generated effects. If you've seen the Ferrari movie, it's got a lot of CG stuff where the cars fly through the air. I like it when they do practical effects.
If you look at this picture now, I mean, it looks just like the start of an F1 race. And I went to a lot of F1 races as a
In
as a young guy.
1975,
I
76.
did. I went to most of them. We were all over the world going to them. And this replicates exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, great
It
film.
was done well.
Yeah, and the rivalry between them, right? Like half of it is the cars and then all that, but the other half is the story and the acting. And the rivalry between these two guys, you're right, it really was worth turning into a film, which is what makes it so fantastic. Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl, who plays as Niki Lauda, does the perfect Austrian accent in it.
Yep.
Great film. We got to end on, at least for this portion, on one of the most iconic of icons, the Aston Martin DB5. Can you own a silver DB5 and not call it the James Bond car?
It's the James Bond
It's
car.
tricky.
Of course, we know where that is. It's in Ohio in a private collection. It's got all the spinners that come out and the smoke shield and the guns that come out of the headlights. But I mean, this is such a great movie.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, if you watch the earlier Bond films before Goldfinger and Thunderball, there was other cars that were Bond cars, and they weren't quite as cooler. I think Dr. No, he drives a 57 Chevy that's a taxi cab at one point, and there's a Sunbeam, and, you know, there's interesting cars, but the DB5 is...
Well, Sean Connery had that mystique about him, and that DB5 fit the character Sean Connery was playing.
Yeah, and it's funny, even today, if you buy the car before that, the DB4,
Yep.
it's not quite as pretty, almost.
That's nice.
Or the car after the DB6, not quite as pretty. The DB5 was this perfect car at this perfect time, and they're
That's
worth
right.
3 to 4 times what
Exactly.
those other cars are worth.
Because everybody knows it is the Bond car.
Right. It's so iconic that, of course, they brought it back for the more recent Daniel Craig films because how do you beat this car? It's one of the prettiest cars of all time.
That's right.
It really is.
And they drive so well.
Yeah, it's a nice driving car.
They're 6-cylinder, twin overhead cam engines, and you'd think, oh, so what? You know, we got big V8s and stuff. These cars tour. I did the Colorado Grand in one once. And we're doing 130 miles an hour all day in this car. Didn't miss a beat.
Yeah. They built a number of replicas, obviously, for the remake. Actually, recently, Aston Martin decided to do a continuation of these
Yep.
cars. How many did they build? 25, I think, continuations?
They did.
So you can buy one if you want. I think it's 20. How much? How many million?
Oh, I think they're $4 or $5 million.
4 or 5 million. So if you
Yeah.
want, just sign up and you can get one. Okay. So movie cars. We're almost done here. I just want to talk briefly about the other cars that are in the exhibit very quickly.
Yeah.
So here's what you can see if you walk over to the gallery. Here's all the cars in the collection. We've already talked about the Rain Man car and, of course, the American Graffiti Impala.
Right.
But there's a couple other ones. Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killers of the Flower Moon. It's a little 25 Chevrolet, but that's what they used in the movie, and that's the car they actually made the movie with.
Yeah, it's still got dirt on the running boards.
Yeah.
There you go. This car is very interesting because this was a concept car that I think at first as a concept car didn't even have an engine.
Didn't have an engine.
Didn't even run.
And when they used it in the movie, it didn't have an engine.
They had to just use it as static display.
Static, yeah.
Yeah, but what a cool car. I love
That's right.
concept cars of the 50s.
Woman's World.
Yeah.
Lauren Bacall.
Yeah. War of the Roses.
War of the Roses. So this is my personal car, and this, if you remember the movie, she drove a big Chevy Blazer, and they were constantly battling, going through a nasty divorce, and she ran the car over with him in the car one night. He was going to go out for a ride, and she jumped in a Blazer and just ran it right over and squashed it. What they did is they leased the car from Morgan's East up in Millerton, New York. And they had like 5 or 6 hoods, and they took the head off the car so it would really accentuate how the car was being crushed. And a friend of mine bought it in a crate, and we restored it together in his basement of his house. And then I painted it for him. And unfortunately, he passed away before he ever got to use the car, and I bought it. So it's got great history. It was the feature car in that movie. Being crushed, you couldn't miss it.
When you got it, was it still in a crushed state? Did you?
It was in a crushed state, all in pieces actually. And so what we did is we bought a brand new body, all new panels from England. It's basically got the engine, the frame, the transmission, the gauges, all that stuff from the original car, but we rebuilt it. So it's not a replica, but it's just a rebuilt car after the crash in the movie.
You brought it back to life.
We did.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about this one? This looks like a 65 Buick Riviera. But
So this is a George Barris car. This is a really cool car. It's called a Villa Riviera, and it was in For Those Who Think Young. It had James Darren, Nancy Sinatra. So this car belongs to Jeff Goldstein. He's from Warwick, Rhode Island. I tried to buy this car many years ago, and they wanted way too much money, I thought, for the car. And Jeff bought it. Jeff's the perfect guy for the car because he likes concept cars and unusual cars. So he owns it today, and I'm really happy for him. It actually was shown in a lot of the movie with a surfboard on the top.
Oh.
Yeah, and you'll see the cool thing is it had 2 telephones inside. Not just one phone, 2 telephones.
Do they talk to each other?
Probably.
All right.
Probably.
Moving on. The Great Race.
The Great Race with Leslie,
Tony Curtis.
Tony Curtis.
Yeah.
What a great film that was.
Man.
And Peter Falk, of course, was Dr. Evil. And what's that? Jack Lemmon was, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he drove the car that raised up and down and did all the nasty things, but. This is the car that actually was in the movie. They've made a lot of replicas over the years, but this is the one that they used.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How about this one?
Vanishing
Point. Yeah, it's a cool film too. We didn't have that in earlier slides, but it's a great film.
Great film. A Dodge Challenger, just a really good thing. There was another Dodge Challenger that I fixed that was in the Cannonball race. Brock Yates' car. It looks very much like this car, but this was in Vanishing Point.
I think this is a Charger, right?
Charger
RT.
Yeah.
Charger. RT.
And the family truckster.
The Griswold family truckster. Somebody's clapping for the Griswold family car. I love it. If you remember the movie, he goes in to buy a car, and the used car dealer just totally hoses him and sticks him in this thing, and he's too much of a pushover, so he ends up using this car for their cross-country road trip.
It was a pretty funny film, that's for sure. And they did a great job. I mean, looking the quad, the 8 headlights, in the front, and all the wood grain. I mean,
I'm thinking that started as an LTD wagon.
It was an LTD wagon.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like a 69 or 70 LTD wagon.
Seen better days.
Yeah. Those are cool cars.
Very cool. I think that's it. We got through everything, but we want to leave room for questions at the end. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Cool.
Okay, we have a couple microphones, myself and Tom, so just hold your hand up and we'll get you the microphone.
Could we turn the lights up a little bit? I know that when somebody's asking a question, I can't I got the lights.
Sure, just
Thank
a couple
you, that's
comments. I don't think you can mention mini movies without Jason Bourne or the Bourne Identity.
The Bourne film, the
which was
first
great.
one,
Yeah.
has a great chase sequence where he's driving a Mini. It's the only one they featured in, and of course it belongs to the German girl that becomes his girlfriend in the film. Baby Driver is another one to me that
Yeah,
I think we could have had in there because the driving scenes in it are dynamic.
That's Subaru. Baby Driver is probably one of my favorite all-time movies.
It's because the driving scene. The reason that I didn't add those films as much is because they're not in for very long. You know, they have a great scene in the movie and then they're sort of
Right.
done. Even in Baby Driver, he only uses that for the getaway car in the first.
Well, we're
bank
trying to
heist.
feature, like the Rain Man cars, as cars that become characters in the movies
Yeah,
themselves.
but yes, it's a great scene.
Yeah.
And then just another comment, George Barris had a little shop in North Hollywood on Riverside, across from two of our favorite fast food restaurants. And during the mid-2010s, I'd pop in a couple times, and you could walk right in. He had one of the original Batmobiles there. He had the Munster coach.
Yeah.
Super personable guy. Just
Real character.
get up from his desk, talk to you.
Try to sell you a
fantastic guy.
T-shirt or something.
No sales at all.
Yeah. George was a fabulous guy.
Yeah.
Really a lot of fun.
And then on your Morgan, those tires are so new. They still have the rubber extrusions.
They do, yeah. Well,
So does it not even roll, or?
no, what we did was that car was actually when I restored it for my friend Bill Caruso, and before I bought it was blue and red, so red body, blue fenders, and I didn't like it very much. So Bill Warner called me and asked me to bring the Rain Man Buick and the Morgan down to Amelia Island for their show. So we put brand new tires on it, and to tell you the truth, after that show, I put it in the barn and we've not used it. So now that it's out and we have it running and it's here, it's going to go back into the usable part of the barn so we can start driving it again. But yeah, that's the reason. Just the tires rolled.
There's a gentleman behind you with the.
We got one right here.
Okay, go ahead.
Comment.
Oh,
Mr.
sorry,
J-
gentleman up here, and then you're up next. No, hang on to your mic. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, Mr. Ward, I'm a big fan. I'm a big Pixar fan. I've been collecting cars from the movie, the 155 diecast scale from Mattel.
Yep.
Largest collector in Georgia with over 2,000 diecasts.
Wow, thank
Have
you.
your diecast today.
Oh, you have the Jay Ward little
I have
truck
your
there.
J.
Yeah,
Ward
exactly.
Truck.
All right.
All right.
Did you have any say choosing your model truck in the movie?
So I name all the die-cast cars that are not named in the film. So all those background ones I name after crew members, but I never named one after myself, and somebody else decided to name that for me. And they actually did two cars. There's one in Cars 2 called Jumpstart J. Ward that is a Jaguar
blue.
E-Type, the light blue one,
Wow.
and that's me too. So I've got two cars named
So
after
you
me.
had the England
Yeah, I got the
car.
British
Wow.
car as well. But yes, all those, what I would do is I get the crew list of people's names and I try to carify their names. Now, if your name is Joe Smith, it's
Yeah.
hard to come up with a fun car name.
Yep.
But there's plenty of other great ones that I was able to come up with along the way, and we still do that today as a thank you to the people who worked on the film.
Wow, that's amazing. I would love to get your signature on this.
I'd be happy to sign that when we're done.
Oh my gosh,
Cool.
thank you.
You
That's
bet.
a dream
Sure.
come true.
This gentleman down here at the shirt.
Just a comment, being a car guy all my life, watching this car in the movie and the wheels going in and out as they should
Yes.
is just remarkable work. And I want to compliment you on those details.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we did build suspension underneath the cars, the correct suspension for all of them. We actually developed a tire rig so the tires would squash and stretch the way they do. A good scene to watch in the film is when Mater and McQueen upset Frank the Combine. Remember their tractor tipping, which is cow tipping? And Frank is the bull, was at the Combine, and he's chasing them out. And as they're going through the field, it's a rutted field, and Mater's got soggy suspension, so he's just cruising, right? Because his suspension, and he's just cruising, and McQueen's going because he's a race car, right? His suspension's so tight that he's bouncing, going up and down like a race car would if you drove it through a rutted field. So all that was dialed in for each car to perform the way they do. The only thing we cheated on was, because it looked cooler, we have the cars dive into the corners, right? Where normally you pull the wheel and you go to the outside, your car goes away from ground, and we had them dive in because it looked more like a downhill skier when they were racing. But yeah, other than that, we tried to get it right. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Jay, I've got two questions, one for Wayne and one for Jay. Jay, my question to you is your thoughts about Cartersville and the Savoy Museum. And Wayne, my question for you, what was Milner's tag number on the front of his 32.5 window?
Ooh.
Milner.
The yellow
Yeah, I don't
coupe. I
know.
know the license plate number. I'm not going to give it
wait,
away.
Wait a minute. That, you,
Well, you can answer
should-
both questions then. I'll answer the Cartersville question.
No, you've been here before.
No, you've answered that a
been here
dozen
before.
times, but let me answer it for him. THX 1132.
138.
1130, yeah, 138.
138.
Good things here.
It's a nod to the first film.
Yep.
THX 138 is the license.
Gotcha.
And that's like that's like a little Easter egg.
It's a little Easter egg.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
Thank
That's
you.
right. Thank you.
I'm
And
gonna
how do
get
I
that
like
license plate for my car now.
how do I like the Savoy? You are so fortunate. I was just telling somebody when we were backstage, you're so fortunate to be in Cartersville, and you have a museum that's truly a world-class car museum. It's very unusual. You know, we're not in Atlanta, we're not in Miami, we're in Cartersville, Georgia, and you've got a museum that is world-class, and that's pretty fortunate of you to have that. The fact that the folks here really have done an amazing job to make this place come out the way it did. They you know, you wouldn't expect something this beautiful to be here, and you're very fortunate to have this museum. So, do
In all the
everything you can to
museums,
support it.
we spent the afternoon at the booth today,
Yeah,
and
the
it's just unbelievable.
Mind blowing. You guys have this stuff in Cartersville. So
Yeah.
you're.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Is he here all the time? He never goes home.
Listen, I've been here so much. I have my own shirt now.
Yeah,
And McCrae, where's McCrae?
it's up there.
McCrae gave me my own badge with my name on it. It says Savoy. So
I only have to come
think-
back 5 more times and then I get one.
That's right. It's like going and getting your ticket punched, you know, at the pizza place. You
Yeah.
finally get a free pizza after 6. Well, thank you. I couldn't pick a better place. And people say, so why do they pay you a lot to go there? I said, well, they don't really pay me anything, but I really like the people and I like the organization. I love the people, Tom and Bruce and Mikhail and
Blake.
our Blake in the booth. Just unbelievable, you know. Super people, great cars, great car people around here. My friend Dino's who's sitting over here, the guy that's got to go out and see the police later on. He lived across the street from me, directly across the street in a development, and he comes to cruise night one night, and he says, I'm moving to Georgia. I go, oh, really?
Well, first of all, you live in Connecticut.
Yeah,
so
we
you
live
don't
in
get-
Connecticut,
yeah.
and so Dino and his wife were living there. And I said, well, you got to go to Cartersville. It's a Savoy Museum. He says, well, that's where we're moving to. And it was just like it was made up. No, you're not moving to Cartersville. He says, yeah, we are.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's great.
So just a wonderful place and great people. And what's great too is you see, because of our friend, of course, that works here and helps curate this is Ken Gross. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight, but Ken is such a valuable partner to the museum to bring all these great cars that you see, to be able to call the people. Ken has got a Rolodex of names and phone numbers, and it's the type of thing, Ken calls you and say, okay, Ken, what do you need? You know, whatever you need, I'll make sure it happens. And so they have that connection as well as the great cars in their private collection here. It all comes together in this theater. How can you beat this?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, got more questions.
Well, you stole my thunder there, Wayne.
I'm sorry.
I was going to make a comment about your shirt, how nice that looks.
Doesn't that
Oh,
sure
yeah.
look good? So how this happened is every time McCrae would see me at an event, I'd have somebody else's shirt on, Haggerty, or I'd have, you know, the Audrain Museum, something. She says, well, how come you don't have any of our shirts? I said, you didn't give me anything. I do this everywhere I go, by the way. I got a lot of shirts.
I felt
So-
bad for you last night. I wanted to go get you one, but she.
So when I go up to the Audrain this fall, I'm going to make sure to wear the Savoy shirt.
So you get free Audrain shirts.
And I was at the Audrain last year, and I forget what jacket I had on, and the guy that owns the place comes up, he goes, how come you don't have our jacket on? I said, nobody's given me one. 2 minutes later, a vest showed up, a hoodie.
Man,
I mean, I had a bag full.
I've been doing it wrong this whole time.
You gotta.
Well, my question is actually for Jay. You were talking about the diecast cars,
Yeah,
and you based them off crew members.
Their names. I named the car. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
When they're not named in the film. Yeah.
So tell me about the hippie van, the
Fillmore,
and the lowrider. Are those crew members?
Ramon. No. So the core characters that we made for the film, Lightning McQueen, Mater, all those characters. Those are all names of characters that we made for the movie, and I probably helped on those to some degree. Sally was named, and I told somebody this earlier on in the movie, she was going to be a vintage Mustang, and so Mustang Sally, that's where we got the name for Sally, right? Mater came from a guy we met in the NASCAR world whose nickname was Mater, so we named our Mater, even though Larry the Cable Guy did the voice. But some of the other ones just kind of came to us. Sarge for the Jeep made sense. Fillmore is interesting because we met a guy on Route 66 who was the ultimate Route 66 hippie, and his name was Waldmeyer. And he did all those crazy maps of Route 66. And we were going to name the hippie bus Waldmeyer. It was perfect. So we come to this hippie and we said, hey man, we're going to name this vehicle after you for this film we're making. You just have to sign the release with the Disney company and you're Waldmeyer forever. And his buddy said, oh, you got to ask them for a bunch of money. Oh yeah, you got to ask for a lot of money for this thing. And he said, I don't want money. And then he said, what else is involved? I said, well, there could be toys made. He says, well, I don't ever want to be on a McDonald's toy. I don't want to do that. And so he started getting weird about it. And his friends basically kept putting stuff in his ear, and he wouldn't sign it. So we couldn't name it Waldmeyer. He never signed the release. And so Fillmore comes from, of course, where all the hippie bands played in San Francisco was the Fillmore in the 60s. So that's where that name came from.
Well, are you going to make full size
Of the other ones?
of the other cars?
No,
Especially Mater.
we do have a full-size Mater, actually. And we do have a Cruz Ramirez, and we have a Jackson Storm, and we've made a couple of them over the years.
And that's in California.
Those are in California. We keep those, for special things. Yeah, no, they don't do, yeah. I will tell you that it is not easy to have these cars outside of the Walt Disney Company. They don't like the characters running around and doing things outside of Disney Park. So I had to fight to have these things be in car museums, and that was my own battle with Disney to say these are important, they're part of car culture, and Lightning McQueen deserves to be in a car museum with real cars so that kids come into a car museum with their parents can go, oh my gosh, Lightning McQueen's here too. And that's why I fight for that. You don't have to buy a ticket to Disneyland to see Lightning McQueen. Yeah.
On the movie with Matt Damon playing Shelby, is that a fairly true character that he?
Which movie is that?
He's talking about the Ford versus Ferrari. He asked if
Oh, yeah.
Matt Damon played a pretty accurate version of Carroll Shelby.
Did they portray him fairly accurately?
Very, very much so. Very much so. And Mr. Ford was played very well too, as he was getting scared to death in the car.
They claim not. They say that's not true, that he broke down crying like
Yeah.
that.
Well, he probably didn't cry, but he was scared to death.
Yeah, the Carroll Shelby stuff is great, and he was truly pioneering. The thing and you can back me up on this, Carroll Shelby was a great salesman. He knew how to get stuff done, right? So he went to Ford to get the engines. He went to AC to get the cars. He promised, oh, Ford, I've got all these ACs lined up, right? He went to AC, oh, I've got all these, and he was always working the show to make the stuff happen, but he could just somehow will it into existence. The true genius, one of them was Ken Miles, the driver, the engineering.
Pete Brock, another one.
Pete Brock was another one who did the Shelby Daytona Coupe. Phil Remington was another one.
Phil Remington, unbelievable.
His crew of people that Shelby put together. Think about like Walt Disney. Walt didn't make the movies. He got smart people together to make the movies, and that's what Carroll Shelby was. He was the smart guy. He was the glue that pulled them all together and made that stuff
And
happen.
being a salesman, so when the GT350 came out, he had to homologate it, which means that they had to make so many production cars in order to go racing. So he only had 25 cars built. So the people from the government, the sanctioning body, came over and they said, okay, well, we're going to park, where's the cars? Well, I got 25 in here. He opens the door. Okay, there's 25 there. Where's the other one? It's in a building down the road. It's lunchtime. Why don't we go to lunch? And so down the road, and so after lunch, he went to the building, and there, same cars, they just moved them to the other building. That's how he got away with it.
True.
And then he said, geez, do you want to see the rest? No, I've seen enough. He says, it's okay, Carroll. You're good.
There's more.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they did fight.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
did get in a number of fights because Ken Miles was a very feisty guy. He was
was very opinionated, and he wanted things his way and fought Shelby about it all the time.
Yeah. Carroll was a chicken farmer from Texas, but he wasn't afraid to speak his mind either.
And right up until the day he died.
Yeah.
I think he's got the most heart transplants of anybody ever in the country.
Carroll Shelby.
Yeah, kept him going.
Yeah.
And he would, people say, oh, my dashboard's signed by Carroll Shelby. Carroll Shelby would sign anything. He'd sign your underwear for $10. So it meant something to the people, but it's amazing. Yes?
Wayne, this one is for you. I know you you love movie cars and everything, and we've been talking about that, but you also know pretty much the big collectors in the country, everybody. Is there any kind of animosity from these people with the movie cars because they destroy so many and they use like important cars or cars that otherwise should be collected or something like that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, when they make the movies, for instance, like the Ford versus Ferrari, they were all replicas. So you're not seeing anybody get upset about that, you know, and it's bringing more people to, it's sort of like my TV show, Chasing Classic Cars. It brought more fans in, more people that weren't even interested in cars, and all of a sudden they become very interested. So the movies really help with that. It sparks interest, and you didn't see any Duesenbergs being rolled over, or, you know, any Rolls Royces being put up in flames. So no, I think that using the replicas like the Ferris Bueller's Day Off, they used, that was a fiberglass car with a 350 Chevy in it, but it looked, and so we knew, because we're really aficionados of the car, but your average viewer didn't know. They figured that was a real Ferrari that got pushed out, you know, the glass garage, but it was just a replica.
So, question for Wayne. With classic cars, you know, this is the history of the internal combustion engine. We all love muscle cars, and I'm a big Dodge fan. And seeing the shift that Dodge is making towards electric, do you think that it'll still carry the same kind of weight, like it's have the same following with the new generation with electric power?
I don't think so. I think this is a short-lived thing. Electrification with cars. I think hydrogen is really the future, but yet. We know the designers over at Stellantis, and they're race car drivers. I mean, there's a lot of great people involved with that company. Ralph Gilles he's such a passionate guy, loves Italian sports cars, and he was the guy that really pushed for all these things that you've seen Chrysler do, you know, with the Hellcat and the Demon and all the high horsepower trucks and cars. I mean, it was all Ralph. And but Ralph is retiring from his position as chief designer there, and one of the reasons is he's not happy about the electric cars. So, but they do make noise, so you can tune your radio in, and you can hear the car rev up. You know, they have that. So I mean, you know, that's a little bit of a.
One more for Jay. I saw the first Cars movie when I was a kid, and I just want to thank you so much for keeping the spirit of the older cars alive. Because not many of my generation really appreciate older cars. And I got started with my grandfather, watching him on 8mm film. He's racing down in his 1960 Impala, looking at the speedometer at 110 miles an hour with an 8mm camera, and just seeing the older cars really being brought to life, especially the Hudson Hornet.
Yeah,
well, Doc, we talked about today. I mean, having Doc Hudson and having Paul Newman as the voice of Doc Hudson was the best. And I own a Hudson just like that, a Hudson Hornet. And that car is not a Hudson Hornet; it's Doc Hudson. Everybody that sees it, oh, you have a Doc Hudson, you know.
I appreciate you saying that, because it's so funny. You know, Mario Andretti was one of the many racing voices we had in the film, and I was at SEMA one year in Las Vegas, and Mario was in the booth across from me with his assistant Terry. And they were having dinner, and I said hi to him, and he said, you know, I get more little kids coming up to me asking me to sign the diecast. They don't know I raced at Indy. They don't know I raced in F1. They don't know I raced in NASCAR. They know me as the guy from Cars. And he goes, I'm okay with that, because how else does a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old kid know about me? Except for that. Richard Petty told me the same thing. He said the kids run inside the Petty Museum straight for that Superbird he has in the museum. And it's just incredible that that movie has helped young kids appreciate racers of a different generation and cars. I've had so many stories of grandfathers with these vintage cars. A guy who had a Hudson Hornet, same thing. He said, my grandkids every weekend want to go driving with me. They used to not care at all. So it's great. It really makes me happy that we were able to bring all these legendary cars and drivers for the movie. So thank you.
Thank you. The last thing I wanted to ask was, is there any official word on how Doc died?
No, there's no official word. It's tricky. You know, we tried to write it into the film, and it just felt too sad and too dark, and you want to keep it uplifting, so don't really say how he died. Of course, Paul Newman passed away, and once that happened, we just could not make somebody else do the voice. That's the truth, honestly. When Paul Newman died, Doc died in a lot of ways to me, because he was that character, and to do a sound-alike would not do the character justice. That's why he had to die. Yeah.
We've got one right here.
So I'm a fan of a lot of JDM cars, and now getting into Fast and Furious. And I was wondering if you guys have any like favorite cars from that, because I noticed you didn't mention it too much.
Yeah, there's some good Japanese stuff, Fast and Furious stuff. Yeah, what about you, Wayne?
I just sold the Talladega Torino that was in Fast and Furious 7 and 8. And so it was a static car. They were leaning against it.
But what
and
about
sitting there.
Japanese JDM?
You know,
Man?
JDMs,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they're great cars. I mean, you know, the Supras are just, I mean, it was amazing. We've got a lot. Normally we have 5, 6 Ferraris sitting out in front all the time, and a Supra pulled in the other day, and there had to be 5 or 6 cars pull in. The guys got out taking pictures of the car. They're stepping on the Ferraris to take a picture of that Supra. So it fits a certain demographic, and young kids, I mean, you know, they don't like anything, Lamborghinis or anything, but if you got a Toyota Supra, you're king. So
I
with
like
that
this-
wing on the back, I mean, they're spectacular
Yeah,
cars.
I like the Skyline. That's the one for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right-hand drive Skyline.
Yeah, with the mirrors out on the fenders.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the bullet mirrors.
2 questions. Sally Carrera, the Porsche that Porsche built and sold, 996, I think is what it was.
Jay took
Worked on that,
absolutely. It
yeah.
was his deal.
And
Yep.
then you didn't mention the movie Le Mans, which I thought would have been in the universe of the discussion.
It's there, but you know, we had to pick and choose
Yeah.
what we were going to talk about. So we thought the Grand Prix was.
Yeah, Le Mans is a great one too. Obviously, that's Steve McQueen in the 917, and very iconic film as well. Yeah, it's funny because he put his own money up for that film, and I don't think it did very well, but it does have some great cars in it. Yeah.
That's for sure.
So Sally Carrera, there's 2 different cars you're talking about. One is the original car we built when the film came out. We built a life-size Sally 996 Porsche. That Porsche gave us the car. We cut it. We shortened it 7 inches. We pushed the A-pillars up. We completely modified the car, made a front fascia for it. It toured around with the first McQueen and Mater that we built for the first film. And when it was done, she went in a warehouse in L.A. And about, I want to say 6 years ago, a gentleman called me and he said, we have the Sally car down here. She's kind of getting beat up. What do you want to do with her? And I thought, man, she deserves to come out of this warehouse. At Pixar, we don't have room to store vehicles the way you guys do here. We didn't really know what to do. We didn't have the means to restore her. So I called the Porsche Museum in Germany. And I said, how would you guys like to have the Sally Carrera car back, the car that was built there? And they said, oh my gosh, we'd love it. So Porsche paid to have the car sent to Stuttgart, Germany, took it apart, put in a new interior, sport exhaust, new seals, new gaskets, completely redid the car from top to bottom, took everything, put it back together. I happened to be over in Germany for a toy fair that year in Nuremberg, and I went to the opening of when Sally was premiered at the museum. They put out red carpet for the car. They invited all the German voice talent, because you have to keep in mind, if you hear the movie in Germany, it's different voices, right? So all the German actors, the voice of Sally and Mater and McQueen are totally different in Germany. Invited all of them there, and they let every kid into the museum free that day. And they brought the Sally car in. They shot off confetti cannons for her, like a movie reveal, that she was covered in confetti, and kids were making hearts on her out of confetti. It was mind-blowing because you know, there's such a love of that character, and to see her back in that Porsche museum to me was just the coolest thing. And they keep her there. She goes back and forth to the U.S., and they fly her back and forth on an aircraft. It's about $30,000 or $40,000 to fly a car on an airplane, and they do that for every time she comes to the U.S. And she's going strong today. I got to drive the car about a year ago, get in it and drive it. And I had never driven it, and it is not a fun car to drive because it's all shortened and hot and you can't see out of it. But it's so cool that it's still alive after, you know, almost 20 years ago we built that car, and she's still around.
And then they built another car. So Porsche got together with Jay, and you guys built another one.
Yeah, I'll tell you that story really quick. I don't want to bore you guys, but about a year and a half ago, Porsche decided that they wanted to build a car for charity, and they wanted to do it for a girl-based charity. And they said, can we build a brand new Sally car? And I said, you know, I don't want you guys to build a new car with eyes in the windshield and a mouth on it that a person could purchase and drive around. That doesn't feel right. But you could do a car inspired by Sally. And so we built a brand new 911 GTS and spec'd it out in Sally Blue, one-of-one Sally Blue paint, had special turbo twist homage wheels, a special houndstooth interior, Sally special logos on the door sills that lit up. We went to town on this car. Porsche has a special wishes program called Sonderwunsch where you can order whatever. We did 31 Sonderwunsch options. So we loaded this car up. The retail sticker on this car was $400,000 with all the options we had on it. This started as a car at $100,000, so we just went nuts. We took the headlights apart and painted them silver like Sally. I wish I had a picture of it. The whole car was painted blue. All the black plastic was painted blue. So it was beautiful. So we took it to Monterey in the summer of 22, and we didn't know what the car would bring. You know, it cost $430,000, so it had to sell for more than $430,000 to make money for the charities, right? That's how it works. And people say, what do you think? What do you think? I said, I don't know, 750,000, I don't know, 800,000 maybe. If it's sold for 950,000, be like 95 like McQueen, maybe that's my number. I'm going to lock it in. And they flew Bonnie Hunt in, who's the voice of Sally, to do this thing, and talk to the crowd and say, look, this is all for charity. This is all going to Girls Inc. and Ukrainian refugees. We got to do this thing. And it went to $1 million in 17 seconds and kept going. And it went to 1.5, and then it went to $2 million. And people started going nuts. And the auctioneer came up to me, and it was about 1.8. And the auctioneer came to me and said, I got a guy on the phone who will give $2 million for it. Will you I said, I was happy back at, when we hit $1 million. Before he could walk away, it went over $2 million. And then it went to 2.5. People went nuts. It went to $3 million. The whole room erupted. Then it went down to 2 guys, and it went all the way to $3.6 million for a 9/11, just because of Sally's name on it. It was incredible. It all went to Girls Inc. and Ukrainian refugees. 100% of it. Porsche just gave all the money to them, 100%.
And the cool thing is, the guy drives the car as his normal car every day.
The guy who bought it drives it. So
he drives
it's pretty
it all
cool.
the time.
Yeah. So that's worth clapping for.
Yeah.
What's that? And she's got Sally's tattoo in the back. Yep, we put that on there too. It's all there. You can look up Sally Special online. You'll see the car. She's got her own Instagram page. We got time for one more question, then we're all done.
One more.
This is it. This better be good. You're the last question. No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure at all.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you so much for doing this behind the scenes info, because that's really what's so fascinating to me. I would just as soon watch all the movie making and all these little secrets and all these little tidbits, and you talking about how long it actually takes to make movies, 6 years to
for
make
cars,
this one.
yeah.
It's just so odd to me and so fascinating. When they come to town to make movies, oh yeah, I'm up there, because it just is so crazy what you do behind the scenes to pull a movie together. And thank you so much for giving us that little additional, or a lot of additional information about behind the scenes.
Oh, cool.
Well, hopefully some of you guys will go out and see some of the movies you've never seen before with the information you've given them, and it's really a lot of fun. And now you can just sit in your living room and go to Netflix and you get anything you want anyways. You don't have to go to the theater, but you have to come to the theater to hear us talk.
Yeah.
In this theater, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Wayne. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for coming, and have a great weekend. See you at the next program.